Okay, we're live once again. Good evening, folks. Welcome to Friday Night Tech Talk. If you're new here, put in the comments, let me know where you're watching from. Tech Talk. And there goes my phone doing what it always does. Okay. So glad to have you here. Eleanor was the first one in. She's probably going to go to bed pretty soon, is my guess. And Renz is here. He's already at work. Yo, Vince, glad to have you here. So, Mike did send me a text that he would not be able to make it tonight. Eleanor, stay here. Yo, Alan, representing Jersey City. Glad to have you here, brother. So Mike's not going to make it tonight. Now, of course, I always send the link out to Mike and Will, and sometimes Will joins while he's working. And here's Brian. Yo, Brian, glad to have you here. And I always send the link to Ted. He said last week he almost waited. I forgot to turn the sound off on my Galaxy Watch 4. Let's see if I can turn the sound off on that. Come on, there you go. I think I know how to work this watch by now, would you? Okay. All right, now I got it on vibrate. And I always send it to Mark. So if Will or Mark or Ted join, Ted said he came close last week, but I know he's super busy. So you guys know the drill. If none of them come in, it'll be a little bit shorter show, but of course I tried to come up with stories I think is interesting to you guys. All right. Alan said, North Jersey, stand up. Okay, so Eleanor stood up. North Bergen girl standing up. Yeah, Eleanor is from North Bergen. I'm from West New York. So, Alan, all three of us are from Hudson County. Oh, yeah, last week I told you I did order one thing for the first time in a long time, kind of a miracle, really, for Black Friday. It did come in. Okay, that's my... backwards. That's my Movo all-in-one webcam, and it has a camera, 1080p. It's got a microphone built in, and it has a ring light built in. I said I would try to use it this week on the show if possible, but no, it's nowhere near. The light is nowhere near enough to use on the show, and I did a little bit of an unboxing. I'll finish it over the weekend and get it up, let you guys see what it looks like. It will be good enough for me to use if I'm traveling, if I'm in a hotel. It would probably do the job. The microphone quality isn't great. It's nowhere near as good as my Yeti mic. But like I said, if I'm traveling, I'm sure it would be just fine. But I will finish up my unboxing and showing it to you and give you a little demo of it sometime over the weekend. So let's see, what's Ellen saying? Oh, nice, George. I picked up a renewed Eufy Smart Robo Vacuum. I thought about a vacuum because I've never had one. Came today and it had hair and was dusty. I text Amazon about return. They said keep it and we'll send the refund. Yeah, Amazon's really good about that. So, hey, as long as it works, then you just got a freebie. That's good. He said can't return vacuums. I think Amazon finds it more of a hassle to return stuff than to let you keep it. But hey, if you can use it and they end up sending you a refund, I think you did better at Black Friday than most of us. A lot better. So, let's see. So he said freebie on deck. Exactly. Okay, so I'm going to start with tonight's stories. And since all the big YouTubers and the bloggers are in Hawaii or were in Hawaii this week, I figured I'd start with Qualcomm's event. So, well, I'm not technically starting with the event. I'm just starting with a story about their new chips. So I'm going to share the screen. And, okay, let's make it bigger. Get me out of here a little bit. So, this is from The Verge. Qualcomm's new always-on smartphone camera is a potential privacy nightmare, and I agree. Next year's Android smartphones will be watching you. So let's see if I can get this into reader view and get rid of some of these ads. Okay. And this is by Dan Seifert a couple of days ago. Your phone's front camera is always securely looking for your face, even if you don't touch it or raise to wake it. That's how Qualcomm Technologies Vice President of Product Management, Judd Heap, introduced the company's new always-on camera capabilities in the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 processor, set to arrive in top-shelf Android phones early next year. Depending on who you are, that statement can either be exciting or terrifying. For Qualcomm, it thinks this new feature will enable new use cases like being able to wake and unlock your phone without having to pick it up, or have it instantly lock when it no longer sees your face. But for those of us with any sense of how modern technology is used to violate our privacy, like me, a camera on our phone that's always capturing images even when you're not using it sounds like the stuff of nightmares, I agree, and has a cost to our privacy that far outweighs any potential convenience benefits. I completely agree with that. Qualcomm's main pitch for this feature is for unlocking your phone anytime you glance at it, even if it's just sitting on a table or propped up on a stand. You don't need to pick it up or tap the screen or say a voice command. It just unlocks when it sees your face. I can see this being useful if your hands are messy or otherwise occupied. In its presentation, Qualcomm used the example of using it while cooking a recipe to check the next steps. Maybe you've got your phone mounted in your car, and you can just glance over at it to see driving directions without having to take your hands off the steering wheel or leave the screen on the entire time. The company is also spinning it as making your phone more secure. Yeah, good luck with that. By automatically locking the phone when it no longer sees your face or detects someone looking over your shoulder and snooping on your group chat. Okay, I can get that. It can also suppress private information or notifications from popping up if you're looking at the phone with someone else. Okay, that's good. Basically, if you're not looking at it, your phone is locked. If it can see you, it will be unlocked. If it can see you and someone else, it can automatically lock the phone or hide private information or notifications from displaying on the screen. So it says it can automatically lock or hide. So I guess it's going to be an option for whatever phones this comes out in. But while those features may sound neat and perhaps even convenient, pardon me, I'm not convinced that having an always-on camera is worth the trade-off in privacy concerns. I agree 100%. Qualcomm is framing the always-on camera as similar to the always-on microphones that have been in our phones for years. These are used for for voice commands like, I'm not going to say them out loud because I have my Google Home right here in the room with me, but you see what it says. And then wake up the phone and provide a response, all without you having to pick up the phone. But the difference is that they are listening for specific wake words and are often limited with what they can do until you actually do pick up your phone and unlock it. Feels a bit different when it's a camera that's always scanning for a likeness. That's true. It's true that smart home products already have features like this. Google's Nest Hub Max uses its camera to recognize your face when you walk up to it and greet you with personal information like your calendar. And that when I walk into this room, now I have the original Google Home Hub. Sometimes it shows me the calendar the second I walk in the room. Most evenings when I walk in, it'll say good evening, so it does know you're there. But those devices are in your home, not always carried with you everywhere you go, and generally don't have your most private information stored in them like your phone does yet. Huge difference there. They also frequently have features like physical shutters to block the camera or intelligent modes to disable recording when you're home and only resume it when you want. It's hard to imagine any phone manufacturer putting a physical shutter on the front of their slim and sleek flagship smartphone. Lastly, there have been many reports of security breaches, yeah, I've got one tonight, and social engineering hacks to enable smart home cameras when they aren't supposed to be on, and then send that feed to remote service, all without the knowledge of the homeowner. Modern smartphone operating systems now do a good job of telling you when an app is accessing your camera or microphone. Yes, they do. While you're using the device, but it's not clear how they'd be able to inform you of a roll gap tapping into the always-on camera. I agree. And again, if somebody's hacking into your camera, you can bet they will be doing what's necessary to get around whatever's in there to stop them anyway. In this presentation, Heap said that always-on camera data never leaves the secure sensing hub while it's looking for faces, implying that the data isn't sent to the cloud and that the apps on the phone won't be able to access it. Interesting that they said implying, so he didn't say the data wouldn't be sent to the cloud. It sounds like. In a follow-up conversation after this article was originally published, he further clarified how the system works on a technical level. The always-on camera is part of a chain that includes a new low-power image signal processor and a machine learning step. All three stages, the camera, the ISP, and the machine learning, are hardened, according to Heap. He said that it isn't possible to inject code into the chain. How many times have people done the impossible or the believed impossible? The always-on camera is limited to a VGA 640 by 480 pixel resolution, even though it uses the phone's existing front-facing camera, and the rest of the phone systems, the main processor, cellular radios, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, etc., are turned off. Heap said this low-power ISP cannot capture photos or video, and no image or video is stored. In this process, it only scans to detect if there is a face or not. If the machine learning algorithm determines a face is detected, the rest of the phone systems are awakened to authenticate the user and unlock the phone or deny access to it. It is impossible in the low power state to get an image out of it, says Heap. The system does not have a way to inform you that its always-on camera is running. That would be nice, like other facial recognition systems use. Heap said that an OEM could choose to add an indicator such as an LED light if they wanted. Another Qualcomm Technologies Vice President of Product Management, Sahid Asghar, told my colleague Kame Gottenberg that users will also be able to disable the always-on camera feature or possibly even select which features they want to use and which they don't. So that's possibly said. They're not telling us for sure yet. I guess it's going to be up to the manufacturer. The consumer has a choice to be able to pick up and choose as to what is enabled and what's not enabled. Let's hope so. It's also possible that the smartphone manufacturers using the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 won't even enable this feature at a hardware level, since Qualcomm doesn't actually make the smartphones its chip goes in instead of one-off novelties that aren't widely purchased. Companies like Samsung, OnePlus, and Xiaomi can customize which features are enabled on their phones and which aren't. Heap said that an OEM can request a Snapdragon chip with the feature disabled at the hardware level. Some of those companies already bypass Qualcomm's image processing components in favor of their own solutions. It's not hard to see them just skipping the criticisms of privacy concerns and foregoing this feature as well. I think I would skip it. But even if it's not found in every phone next year, the mere presence of the feature means that it will be used by someone at some point. Yeah, count on that. It sets a precedent that is unsettling and uncomfortable. Qualcomm may be the first with this capability, but it won't be long before other companies add it in the race to keep up. Ultimately, it comes down to a level of trust. Do you trust that Qualcomm has set up the system in a way that prevents the always-on camera from being used for other purposes than intended? No, I do not. Do you trust that the OEM using Qualcomm's chips won't do things to interfere with the system? No, I do not, either for their own profit or to satisfy demands of a government entity. Exactly. Even if you do have that trust, there's a certain level of comfort with an always-on camera on your most personal device that goes beyond where we are currently. Maybe we'll just start having to put tape on our smartphone cameras like we already do with laptop webcams. Yeah, I know Jerry from Android Central, he puts tape on his cameras in the house. Update from yesterday at 5:15 p.m. After this article was published, Qualcomm Vice President of Product Management, Judge Heap, gave further information about how the always-on camera system works on a technical level. The company also clarified that the system does not identify the faces it detects. That is handled by the phone's existing facial identification authentication systems. The article has been updated with this new information and the headline has been changed. So, do you want a phone with an always-on camera, always looking for a face? I don't think I do. So just a interesting story. I just thought that was a good story to start with. And I didn't do any other stories about Qualcomm, even though I know all those guys are enjoying themselves in Hawaii like they always do every year. They look forward to that. So, anything you guys want to say about that or the privacy concerns, you just let me know. And I neglected to show my website like I usually do. So let me just do that real quick. Share the screen. So all the stories are on my website, mobilegrizzly.wordpress.com. And just click on the top story. That'll be tonight's show notes. So let's get rid of that. So to me, that's very disconcerting, having an always-on camera on your phone, and it's always on what else is going on in there security-wise. A lot of companies are not going to tell us. So the whole thing is very disconcerting to me, and I wouldn't trust it. So now we're going to go back to rumors that we've heard for years now, but there seems to be more of an indication that maybe there really is a Google Watch coming. And I know we've heard it all before, but I figured, well, if there's more evidence, let's go ahead and show the story. Again, this one is on The Verge. And Google is making its first in-house smartwatch that could launch in 2022. Notice, could launch. At least they're saying it's making. They're not saying it's a rumor. But we'll get down into that in the article. A Pixel Watch is finally in the works, and this was from yesterday. So let's put it in reader view. Okay. It's by Ken Gartenberg and Alex Heath. Google is finally making its own in-house smartwatch that is set to launch in 2022, according to a person familiar with the matter in a new report from Insider. And Insider does often have pretty good information. While Google has made its own smartphones for years under the Pixel line, which has since extended to other accessories like wireless headphones, the company has never designed its own smartwatch, despite the fact that Google has had a companion wearable platform for Android since 2014. Yes, nobody wanted to use it, except I'm using it on my Galaxy Watch 4 Classic. The watch, codenamed Rohan, is being worked on by Google's Pixel hardware group separately from Fitbit, which Google bought for $2.1 billion earlier this year. According to Insider's report, the new upcoming Google Watch, it's not clear whether Google will actually be calling it a Pixel Watch yet, will serve much the same role as the Pixel phones do for Android, an example for both consumers and hardware partners of what Google software is truly capable of when given the right hardware. The device is expected to cost more than a Fitbit and compete more directly with the Apple Watch, according to the Verge's source. The watch will have basic fitness tracking features, including a step counting and a heart rate monitor, with Google also reportedly working on debuting a Fitbit integration into Wear OS, codenamed Nightlight, with the new watch when it launches. Yeah, the thing is, Apple and Samsung's latest watches are so good with any kind of health tracking that I think Google's going to have to come up with something pretty good if they're going to try to compete. Google is currently working in the middle of the latest reinvention of its smartwatch platform with Wear OS 3. Unlike the earlier versions of Wear OS or Android Wear, Wear OS 3 was developed as a partnership with Samsung, merging the Tizen platform into Google's own. Yeah, there it is. There's the Galaxy Watch 4. And I have it on because I switch between the Apple Watch and the Galaxy Watch 4 every other day. But so far, Wear OS 3 has only launched on Samsung's Galaxy Watch 4, which runs a heavily customized version of the new operating system that eschews most of Google's services and apps for Samsung's own. I love this watch. Google nearly had a Pixel watch in the past, according to a 2019 report. The LG Watch Sport and LG Watch Style, released in 2017, were originally supposed to be marketed as part of the Pixel brand, but an employee told Insider that Google hardware boss Rick Osterloh axed the idea because they didn't look like what belonged in the Pixel family. Both devices didn't impress us when they came out. The news of a Google-built smartwatch isn't a complete surprise. You can say that again. Osterloh told The Verge's Dieter Bond earlier this year that an in-house Wear OS wearable was already on the horizon, noting at the time that Google's acquisition of Fitbit was still pretty early in the integration. Osterloh did mention that you'll see them, the Fitbit team, build wearables on Wear OS in the future, with the team already hard at work at that, although it's not clear whether Osterloh was referring to the Rohan watch or a different future product. But the beginning of this article makes it sound like it's going to be separate from Fitbit entirely. So I guess we'll wait and see, hopefully sooner or later. But I have a suspicion that whatever a Google Watch would cost, a lot of us are going to jump on that. Because if it's going to try to compete with the Apple Watch, it's going to cost $300-400 at least. That's my best guess. Anyway, it's still kind of exciting. We all get excited every time somebody mentions a Pixel watch. So we'll see what happens. Okay, I'm watching for if any of the guys come in. I'll let you know. Okay, next one. I guess you probably know that NVIDIA is working on an ARM acquisition. Well, I'm going to guess that's probably not going to happen. Let me share my screen. All right, this was on Cnet. And FTC suit says NVIDIA's $40 billion ARM acquisition would hurt rival chip makers. The FTC's lawsuit comes just after the UK launched a 6-month investigation of the graphic chip giant's acquisition attempt. So they're investigating in Europe, and they're investigating, well, this FTC is suing here, so I'm guessing this won't happen. And they make some pretty good points in the story, I think. So let's put on read a view to get rid of some of these ads. Okay. NVIDIA announced the agreement with ARM in September 2020. The U.S. Federal Trade Commission said Thursday it's suing to block NVIDIA's takeover of chip designer ARM. The deal, worth $40 billion, would give NVIDIA control over the computing technology and designs that rival firms rely on to develop their own competing chips, according to the FTC. The FTC alleges that the combined NVIDIA ARM company would have the means and incentive to stifle innovative next-generation technologies, including those used to run data centers and driver assistance systems in cars. And I think they have a pretty good point there. Tomorrow's technologies depend on preserving today's competitive, cutting-edge chip market, said FTT Bureau of Competition Director Holly Vidova. This proposed deal would distort Arm's incentives in chip markets and allow the combined firm to unfairly undermine NVIDIA's rivals. And that's the thing. So many manufacturers use Arm chips. I think they have a pretty good point there. Arm licenses chip designs and related technology to companies like Apple, Samsung, Qualcomm. Everybody uses them almost. And NVIDIA's acquisition would give new reach to NVIDIA, which has done well with chips that accelerate graphics and AI, but not the central processors designed by companies like Intel, Qualcomm, and Apple. But it's raised hackles with Arm licensees, many of which compete directly with NVIDIA and are leery of NVIDIA's promise to preserve Arm's independence and neutrality. I agree with them 100%. NVIDIA will work to demonstrate that this is a statement from them, will work to demonstrate that this transition will benefit the industry and promote competition, the company said in an email statement. NVIDIA will invest in Arm's R&D, accelerate its roadmaps, and expand its offerings in ways that boost competition. Yeah, good luck with that. Create more opportunities for all Arm licensees and expand the Arm ecosystem, the spokesperson said. NVIDIA is committed to preserving Arm's open licensing model and ensuring that its IP is available to all interested licensees, current and future. And yeah, that sounds nice to say, but what it comes to making money once the deal is through, then what? I gotta agree with the FTC on this one. The FTC suit arrived after the European Union said in October it'll investigate the deal. A skeptical UK government said in November it will launch its own 6 months investigation of the deal too. So the EU may stop it, the UK may stop it, British government, or we may stop it, or all three, which is what I would guess would happen. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang is not typically known for backing down. I don't think he's going to have a choice. Bernstein research analyst Station Raskin said in a report Thursday, given that the U.S. is likely working with competition authorities in other countries, the prospects for success are looking somewhat dim at the moment. I agree. NVIDIA announced its intended takeover September 2020, saying at the time it would create the premier computing company for the age of artificial intelligence. So on the one hand, they're saying, okay, it's going to leave it open and you're not going to interfere with any licensees. But then they're saying they're going to create the premier computing company. So how are you going to do that if you're going to let everybody else use exactly what you're using? I don't buy it. That's my guess. So I don't think this deal's going to go through. But I guess we'll see. Okay. And here's another cyber attack. Since I've done so many of them, and we've had so many on Friday Night Tech Talk, I figure why leave out Panasonic? So it's their turn. And this is on ZDNet. Panasonic confirms cyber attack and data breach on last Friday. The tech giant said its network was illegally accessed on November 11th. So I guess they found out about it last Friday. Let's go and read a review. And this is by Jonathan Grigg. A tech manufacturing giant, Panasonic, has confirmed that its network was accessed illegally this month during a cyber attack. In a statement released on Friday, the Japanese company said it was attacked on November 11 and determined that some data on a file server had been accessed during the intrusion. After detecting the unauthorized access, the company immediately reported the incident to the relevant authorities and implemented security countermeasures, including steps to prevent external access to the network, Panasonic said. In addition to conducting its own investigation, Panasonic is currently working with a specialist third-party organization to investigate the leak and determine if the breach involved customers' personal information and/or sensitive information related to social infrastructure. And usually when we have these things, when the company is using a third party to help investigate, they usually give us the name. I was surprised that they didn't tell us who that party was that's working with them. So they don't even know what information was accessed yet. While no other information was provided in the statement, Japanese outlets Mainichi and NHK said the breach actually started, get this, on June 22nd and ended on November 3rd. So again, another one of these companies that found out months later. Seems like they all take a long time to find this stuff out. Panasonic did not respond to requests for comment, but confirmed that date in an interview with TechCrunch and said the November 11th date actually refers to when the breach was first discovered. So they're confirming that this stuff started in June and ended the week before November 11th. So no wonder they don't know what was accessed. NHK reported that the attack service stored information about Panasonic business partners and the company's technology, noting a ransomware incident last November last year involving a subsidiary of the company that also leaked business information. We cannot predict whether it will affect our business or business performance, but we cannot deny the possibility of a serious incident. In other words, they don't know, but at least they're open to telling. Sounds like they're open to telling when they find out. Which, according to the record, reported that the breach may have also involved employee information. Gee, that's great. Panasonic signed a pact with McAfee in March to create a vehicle security operations center focused exclusively on cyber attacks. I guess they should have done that sooner. So Panasonic's been hacked, has been for months, and they don't know what was gotten yet. So just thought it would be interesting to show that story since I show everybody else that's gotten hacked. Okay, any of you folks have any comments on any of this stuff, let me know. I know you don't want to talk to me today. That's okay. Okay. And this I thought was interesting. I don't know if you guys heard about this. Let me share screen. And this one is on Cnet. A federal judge blocks Texas social media censorship law, which Texas passed a few months ago. The law would ban companies like Facebook and Twitter from blocking content based on political viewpoints. And that's by Stephen Musil. So let's go to reader mode, reader view. Okay. A federal judge on Wednesday granted a preliminary injunction against the Texas law that prohibits large social media companies from banning users or blocking posts based on their political viewpoints. HB 20, signed by Texas Governor Greg Abbott on September 9th, targets companies with at least 50 million monthly users in the U.S., including Facebook, Twitter, and Google's YouTube, and would also allow residents of the state to sue companies for a reinstatement of accounts. The law, billed by the governor's office as protecting Texans from wrongful censorship on social media platforms, was set to take effect yesterday. So they blocked that just in time. And I can kind of see both sides of this. The new law came about amid rising pressure from some Republican lawmakers who allege that Twitter, Facebook, and other social networks harbor anti-conservative bias. The social networks have denied those charges. In his decision, Judge Robert Pittman for the Western District of Texas wrote that social media companies have a First Amendment right to moderate content on their platforms. He also rejected the defendant's argument that such companies are common carriers, adding that the state offered no convincing support for recognizing a government interest in the free and unobstructed use of common carriers' information about content. And that's been the argument all along. Facebook and Twitter and others are they common carriers? Well, they say no. Right now, they're covered because they're not. But that's the ongoing argument. Pittman's 30-page ruling, it's down here. I'm not going to go through it. Went on to address whether the social media companies exercise editorial judgment over content posted to their platforms. The court is convinced that social media platforms, or at least those covered by HB 20, by this law, curate both users and content to convey a message about the type of community the platform seeks to foster, and as such, exercise editorial discretion over their platform's content. So in other words, it's their company, and since they're not a common carrier, they have a right to have some editorial discretion over what's on their platforms. I guess he's right. That's, like I said, I can see both sides of this. Without editorial discretion, social media platforms could not skew their platforms ideologically, and the state accuses them of doing. And Serrano's in here. What's up, brother? Glad to have you here. So now we've got Jersey and New York represented. Okay. Governor Abbott's office said it's working with the state attorney general on an appeal of the ruling, allowing biased social media companies to cancel conservative speech is hostile to the free speech foundation America was built on. Press Secretary Renee Eyes said in a statement, "In Texas, we will always fight to defend Texans' freedom of speech." In June, a federal judge blocked a Florida law from taking effect that would have allowed the state to punish social media companies for banning politicians or political candidates from their platforms. The judge in that case found the law's prohibition on deplatforming may violate companies' free speech rights. So kind of the same thing. So both judges are kind of thinking the same, and I can see where they would, and said that the legislation on the whole is viewpoint-based. Of course it is. NetChoice and the Computer and Communications Industry Association, internet industry groups that sued the challenge to the Florida bill, filed the lawsuit challenging the Texas law in September. So the same companies, the same two companies, are the ones that filed the lawsuits in both cases. So if one judge blocked one in Florida, it kind of makes sense that the Texas judge would do the same thing. Steve Del Bianco, CEO of NetChoice, called Wednesday's ruling a victory for free speech. Notice how well I said Steve Del Bianco, because I was raised in Hudson County, New Jersey, and I'm very used to saying Italian names. That's why that was easy for me. HB 20 would unleash a tidal wave of offensive content and hate speech crashing onto users, creators, and advertisers. And I can see where that might be true, because if you're going to let anybody say anything, well, they're sure somebody's going to come up with some hate speech, so I can see their point. Thanks to the decision made today, social media can continue providing high-quality services to Americans while simultaneously keeping them safe from irresponsible users and offensive content, Del Bianco said in a statement. Google, Facebook, and Twitter didn't immediately respond to requests for comment. So like I said, I can see both sides of this. I can see where the Republicans are saying, well, you're pushing down conservative comments, and maybe they are. But I can see the other side where, okay, if you're going to let anybody say anything, where does it stop? So it's a very touchy issue, in my opinion. I just thought it was interesting. Okay. So, yeah, it's going to be a quick show tonight, folks, because it's just me. And I think I've got 7 stories. And here comes the most serious story of the night. This one is pretty heavy duty about Apple. So let's share. Okay, this is on The Verge again. Look at the picture. The guy falling. You'll see it has to do with suicide. So, okay, Apple's frontline employees are struggling to survive. The company's hourly workers say conditions are untenable. Does Apple care? Get it? Does Apple care? Okay. Read a view. Okay, this is by Zoe Schiffer. And this was from 2 days ago. If you ask Jimmy Bailey what killed his best friend, Mark Calavis, his answer is simple. It was Apple. How else could he explain how the Apple Store wellness champion, known for evangelizing therapy and mental health, would slide into a depression so profound he'd be forced to take medical leave and ultimately die by suicide? It was nothing in his outside life that did this, Bailey says. It was work. And it does sound like it as we go through the story. Calavis started at the Apple South Point store in Durham, North Carolina, in March 2013. His colleagues laughed when he'd arrived in the morning with multiple changes of clothes. He went a 6-mile run up to the American Tobacco Trail on his lunch break, and healthy snacks. He was on the keto diet and carried around 2 64-ounce water bottles. That's a lot of water. He always had so many bags, Bailey remembers. Calavis had his demons. His mother had died when he was young. He'd never really known his father, but his job at the Apple Store grounded him. It gave him a sense of dignity and purpose. So I guess he loved his job. Then the store hired a new manager, a whip-smart, data-driven woman. According to Bailey and another former colleague, if you were on her good side, you could get a good schedule, a special project, a promotion. But if you weren't, you'd be punished in the most strategic ways possible, the former colleague says. So it seems like everybody agrees about this manager. By all accounts, Mark Calavis was never on her good side. She hated him, she told me, the former colleague explained. So this is a guy who worked there. She would just constantly talk about how Mark wasn't good enough, Mark wasn't special. Don't give that opportunity to Mark because he hasn't earned it, even though he had done everything to earn it. Over the years, working under the manager, Calavis, I guess it is, confidence started to wane. He felt trapped, intimidated, and bullied by her behavior, according to his close friends. In 2021, he took medical leave to cope with his depression. Bailey and 2 former colleagues say there have been multiple HR complaints filed against the manager, so it's not just the one guy. Apple would not confirm the complaints, but nothing ever seemed to change. I filed 3, maybe 4 complaints myself, one of the former colleagues says. I participated in at least 6 investigations. Eventually, employees lost hope that anyone at Apple's corporate office would hold the woman accountable. So it sounds like they were doing investigations, but nobody did anything. You would think if enough employees keep putting in complaints, well, just my opinion. In response to a request for comment from The Verge, Apple spokesperson Nikki Leahy said, "We are and have always been deeply committed to creating and maintaining a positive and inclusive workspace. We take all concerns seriously and we thoroughly investigate whenever a concern is raised. And out of respect for the privacy of any individuals involved, we do not discuss specific employee management," I guess especially after they've committed suicide. The story illustrates a potentially widespread problem for Apple's frontline workers. Yeah, this gets worse in my opinion. When something goes wrong, a bad manager, a missed paycheck, an untenable onslaught of work, many say they have no one to turn to for help. Corporate makes decisions based on what they think will work in the stores without talking to people who work in the stores, a former colleague says. This struggle echoes a complaint made by some employees in Cupertino who've said that the employee relations team, Apple's version of human resources, is more concerned with protecting the company than its workforce. But hourly workers at Apple may have it even worse. The employees who spoke to The Verge say that while the company is hyper concerned with customers, it treats its retail and customer service staff as an afterthought. Over the past 5 months, Apple's hourly workforce has been watching as corporate employees advocate for more pay transparency. Some have organized with employees in Cupertino under the banner #Apple2 to call for better working conditions. Others are just now beginning to speak out. So it sounds like this is going to get worse. Realizing that the issues their well-compensated corporate colleagues are experiencing could be greatly exacerbated on the front lines. The Verge spoke with 16 current and former employees on Apple's retail, support, and sales teams who say their complaints about working conditions and pay have largely been ignored. Some say they are governed more by algorithms and systems than actual managers, making it difficult to get holistic help. Well, obviously not the guy to commit suicide. She was certainly having some kind of relationship with him. All of them know that while they came into the job believing in Apple's mission, they see a profound breakdown in how the company's corporate values translate to the front lines. They say our soul is our people, but it really didn't feel like that to me, a former employee says. And I realize a bunch of these are from former employees too, so they may not be the most even-handed. But I gather some employees who are still there are saying some of this stuff. Nearly every shift at an Apple store starts the same way. An employee picks a line from the Apple credo and talks about how it applies to that day's work. We are here to enrich lives, to help dreamers become doers, to help passion expand human potential, to do the best work of our lives. At our best, we give more than we take. You have to say that every day? Wow. Or some of that, at least one of them every day. Workers say it's easy to tell who wants to get promoted because they'll pick the line turning dreamers into doers and discuss how Apple's devices can help customers do that. Not every retail worker buys into it, though. People get emotional, says a current retail employee in Pennsylvania. You see people go really deep in that stuff when they want to get promoted. It's all just pandering. Can't believe you have to say this stuff every day. Part of the issue is pay. Apple's retail employees make on average between $19 and $25 an hour in the United States, according to Glassdoor. That's good for the retail industry, but it can be grating for employees who want to build a career at the tech giant. Some say that after staying at the company for 6 years, they're making less than $21 an hour. Wow, if you started at 19, that's not good. Then there's the issue of how retail workers are evaluated. In the store, Apple uses something called a Net Promoter Score to see how stores are performing. After a customer leaves, they'll sometimes receive a survey asking them to evaluate the employee who helped them, as well as the overall store experience. Low scores can often be about factors outside the employee's control. Things like low inventory or wait time. Yeah, true. Staff can't control that. But they still reflect poorly on staff. There's never positive intent assumed, says a current employee in Pittsburgh. It also feels like you're a kid getting in trouble and you're making an excuse. The surveys are meant to give customers a consistent way to say whether the stores are meeting Apple standards, but they systematically place the customer over the employee by design. Well, I guess you want to place your customers on top. That makes sense. This can be particularly frustrating when the issue stems from Apple corporate. In 2017, Apple customers with older iPhones realized that if they replaced their phone's batteries, the performance would significantly improve. This quickly, we all remember this. This quickly became one of Apple's largest customer experience scandals as people realized the company had intentionally slowed down older iPhones to preserve their battery life. And they said supposedly, Apple admitted it. To quell public outrage, the company said it would replace phone batteries free of charge for a year to meet rising customer demand. And this is where it gets heavy to me. Apple told some retail workers to try and complete battery swaps in 10 minutes, according to a former employee. The result was a disaster for workers who said they didn't have the supplies or resources necessary to meet the mandate. You can't replace a battery in 10 minutes, a former retail manager said bluntly. Nothing translates from corporate to the stores because they're not in the stores, which does make sense. And you hear that in a lot of companies. Set against this backdrop, the Apple credo has become increasingly important. It's meant to inspire employees to provide exemplary customer service, to elevate even mundane parts of the job to stratospheric levels of importance. In the past, some employees assumed that it applied to how Apple treats its workforce. Wasn't the company supposed to enrich the lives of its employees, to give more than it took? That started to break down on March 14th, 2020, in the early days of the pandemic, when Apple announced it was temporarily closing all its stores, sending retail employees home. In Pennsylvania, one worker who was selected to be part of a new program to answer calls from customers who needed tech support over the phone. The employer was relieved. His wife was immunocompromised and he himself suffered from asthma, making the pair particularly vulnerable to COVID-19. Being able to work from home seemed like a perfect solution to stay safe and continue earning money. From the start, the job was stressful. Employees spent 8 hours a day fielding inquiries from angry customers. They were evaluated based on call time and customer satisfaction. So if the customers are starting out angry, I'll bet the satisfaction isn't great. As with many hourly roles at Apple, people with high scores knew they'd eventually get better schedules, promotions, and opportunities. People with low scores could be placed on action plans to try to improve. That makes sense. The Pennsylvania employee says he didn't hear much from his manager until July 2020, when he was told that his scores were good. So good, in fact, that he was going to start taking two-tier calls. If a low-level advisor couldn't answer a customer's questions, they could escalate the call to him. He asked if the job came with a pay bump and is told it did not. Okay. Apple tried to make up for the increased workload. This is ridiculous. Apple tried to make up for the increased workload for hourly employees by sending the employees in the work from home program a shirt as a gift for all their hard work. When it arrived, check this out, employees realized it had a large 14 on the back for iOS 14 and 2020 printed on the sleeves. These were leftovers from WWDC 2020, Apple's live event that had been canceled. And I remember and they never had that event. So employees are supposed to think this is a reward. I doubt it. The shirt felt like a slap in the face. Employees wanted a raise. Some had multiple roommates and worked for two or three jobs to try to make ends meet. On top of that, they were dealing with the same existential angst as the rest of the population weathering the global pandemic, all while being yelled at on the phone by customers who barely treated them like people. The Pennsylvania employee said his mental health started to suffer. He was working in a poorly lit room, unable to leave the house because of the lockdown. Well, I blame the poorly lit room on you. It's your house. When he tried to talk to his manager about how he was feeling, he was told, try opening a window or put a plant on his desk. Oh, yeah, that's going to help a lot. One day, the employee was doing a screen share with a customer who was having issues with her display. The device wasn't under warranty. He told her it would likely cost $500 to fix. The woman started to cry. This gets bad. I'm a college student. Can't you make an exception, she asked. He said he was sorry, but it wasn't up to him. Then the woman opened photo booth on her computer screen, activating the webcam, and held a razor to her wrist. This is what the stress you're giving me is doing to me, he says. She told him. Nice. When the employee explained to his boss what had happened, the man asked if he needed a half an hour to decompress. The employer responded that it didn't feel like enough time. According to his recollection, his boss conceded, okay, take a breather, but try to keep it to 30 minutes because we need to keep our call time down. I don't know. In early 2021, Apple stores started to reopen, and the employee asked to go back to in-person work. I have asthma. My wife has a chronic illness, but we were forced to wager my mental health against my physical health to see if it was worth going back to the store. The decision wasn't his anyway. He was told he needed to keep working from home. It wasn't until he asked to go on medical leave that he was finally able to go back to the store. They let me come back to the store to keep me off leave, he alleges. In September, Apple announced that all retail and care employees who'd been with the company since March 31st would receive a $1,000 bonus. To some workers, it was a nice surprise. But after years of feeling mistreated, others believed the bonus had more sinister motivation. I think it feels more like they don't want to get sued for not offering hazard pay after making some of us work in public for the last year, the Pennsylvania employees. I don't know. If somebody would give me $1,000 bonus, I think I'd probably appreciate it. But of course, I'm not in his shoes. The mental health drain that retail employees felt working from home during the pandemic gave them a glimpse into the lives of another organization at the tech giant, AppleCare. Those employees are part of the company's tech support team that answers customer questions in online chats and over the phone. One employee, a gay man living in the South, said that when he landed the job at Apple after high school, he knew he'd stay with the company for years. This big company that everyone talks about, I had a chance to be a part of, he says. I always describe it as my longest relationship. At first, the idea of working from home for a tech giant seemed to be too good to be true. But over time, he says, sitting at a computer for 8 to 10 hours a day started to take a mental toll. Trust me, I know about that. In 2021, he decided to take medical leave to cope with the stress of responding to customers in under 2 minutes, a requirement for his position. As his medical bills started piling up, the employee says he and his partner ran out of money. We had to start, this is tough, had to start selling our belongings to pay bills. We downsized and spent most of the summer without electricity or air conditioning. This is down south. Anyway, without electricity, that's heavy duty. Of course, I don't know their spending habits. Maybe they overspent. I don't know. When his paycheck arrived in May, check this out, 2021, he found it was just $23 due to health insurance deductions. He couldn't afford to pay rent. When he contacted Apple's corporate payroll team, he said the response was, we'll look into it. I've given the best years of my life, all my 20s working for Apple. Now I need help and they're not there. I don't think the corporate people or payroll teams have any idea what it's like to live on the edge financially. They probably don't. While Apple's corporate office takes a proactive, deliberate approach to product development, Apple's customer support function operates in a reactive mania, using a vast array of processes and metrics to keep employees on task. If workers go to the bathroom or are working their computers for more than 5 minutes, they'll sometimes get a note from the manager asking why they aren't working. Sounds a lot like Amazon to me. They're monitored based on their customer service satisfaction score, as well as after call work time, which dictates how much time after a call or chat they spend writing up notes, and average handle time, which indicates how long it takes them to solve a customer issue. A good AHT is around 15 minutes for phone calls and 2 minutes for chats. It starts to get into a game of fixing the numbers more than helping the customers. They look at the numbers and assume that is helping a customer. So it sounds like the employees might fudge a little bit. Oh, Ted is in here. Let's see what Ted is saying. That was the dude that is on the charge of wellness kill. I don't know what that means. Himself. That had to be a good omen. Oh, okay. Yeah, it probably was a good omen until everything went bad. And Renz, thank you very, very much as always. And I understand you're busy at work. Okay, back to the story. Sounds like the employees can fudge those numbers if to try to make themselves look better. I don't know if that's true. Employees who really want to help customers said they often have to sacrifice their personal metrics. If I have an elderly person on the phone, am I going to be a little slower with them to the detriment of my personal metrics? Yes, I can't treat every person the same because they're not all the same. That makes sense. On chats, the ability to resolve issues can be even more difficult, as employees are expected to speak to 3 people simultaneously doing busy parts of the year. I couldn't do that. It's impossible to do a good job multitasking with that many scenarios, a current employee explains, especially because we have to respond in 2 minutes, from an Apple ID issue to an iCloud issue to an iOS or Mac install. About 4 years ago, Apple started hiring vendors to manage some of the chats and calls. For two-tier advisors, people who were tasked with taking calls that couldn't be resolved by lower-level employees, this meant a sudden onslaught of angry customers. Vendors didn't reach the same level of training as in-house Apple employees, according to multiple employees, meaning issues were constantly being escalated. Well, that makes sense. By the time a tier 2 advisor got the call, customers were often irate, which is the job they offered that guy in Pennsylvania. In September 2019, an AppleCare employee wrote a letter to management laying out the team's grievances. The letter said the company should eradicate triple chats and reduce double chats, and noted Apple should include a cost of living adjustment in addition to our raises because it's just, fair, and just. They included links to studies about how multitasking increases chronic stress. The employee declined an interview, I guess I'm not surprised. Then in February 2021, two-tier chat advisors were told those jobs were being eliminated. Well, that's good. One employee says they were told it was because customer satisfaction rating wasn't as high for the two-tier chat team as they were for the tier 2 phone advisors. It was a self-fulfilling prophecy. Yeah, you could see that coming. The employee explains, noted that taking 3 chats at a time is notably different than answering one phone call after another. We equated it to being able to do our job with one hand tied behind your back. I could see that. Employees felt like the promise of working at Apple, the idea that you could move up in the organization and eventually land a managerial role, was slowly being taken away. In the past, hardworking employees could be selected for a team manager assistant role, meaning they'd fill in for managers who were on vacation. The idea was that eventually they themselves would become the manager. In practice, however, it just meant that they took on managerial responsibilities with the illusion of possible job progression and received no extra pay. I've seen that on a number of jobs, not to myself. Now, even that then reward felt elusive. Employees also saw a disparity in Apple's financial success, reflected in the wealth of its executives and their own financial precarity. And yeah, but you don't compare yourself to the poor. That doesn't make sense to me. In 2015, Tim Cook announced that he planned to give away his $800 million fortune before he died. When I saw Tim Cook was saying he's worth nearly $1 billion and he plans to give all that away before he dies, I thought, well, SH, he could start with us in AppleCare. Well, I disagree. I think he has a right to do what he wants with his money, especially when it's his dying request. A few weeks before he died, Mark Khalifa sent an email to an Apple Human Resources representative, according to a text conversation he later had with his friend Jimmy Bailey, excerpts of which have been viewed by The Verge. This is the guy who committed suicide. Over 7 years, I too have been a victim of intimidation, public humiliation, bullying, slandering, retaliation, and on one occasion, lies. I have held out a long time for change, but to date, no store leader or senior manager has been able to keep me safe from the manager, that same lady. I want to return to work for Apple. I want to keep contributing to the company. However, for my mental health, I don't feel like I can do so while working in the same environment as that same manager. Bailey says Kalivas had lost hope that he'd be able to transfer to a different. Yeah, I wonder why they just didn't transfer him. After all, the investigations, especially since she had so many people complaining about her. After all, the investigations into the manager had gone nowhere. He felt like some other employees at the store, that corporate just didn't care. Unlike his 3 former colleagues, however, he was now too depressed to interview for another job and leave Apple altogether. The morning of September 7, 2021, Bailey walked into Kalivas' room to find him slumped over a chair, his arms hanging limp in his lap. A month has passed, and I still see him in that chair, whether my eyes are closed or open, Bailey says. I can understand that. I want to end this speaking directly to Tim Cook, Bailey says in a final interview with The Verge. Tim, I have emailed you about this issue. I explained the damage caused at Apple South Point. I also spoke to an employee relations representative and expressed my concern. I told them that all they need to do is look into the records on hand to see the devastation that could have been prevented. What then, Tim, do you plan on doing? I still see Mark. I see him constantly. But even though I see him, he is gone. In a statement emailed to The Verge, an Apple spokesperson said, we were devastated by the death of our colleague, and our thoughts are with his loved ones in their time of grief. Doesn't sound like it to me. That's just my opinion. Anyway, one very heavy-duty story. So I just thought it was an interesting story, and I guess we got some glimpse of what it's like to work at an Apple store and what kind of pressure those people are under. Let's see what Ted is saying. You help people in chart at the same time. Two people in chart. Three is pushing it. I agree. Chat, he says. Okay. He says Apple stores are notorious for hiring managers externally in their stores. You didn't hear too much about promotions from the bottom to the top. Yeah, but Ted, from the beginning, it just sounds like this lady was mistreating him from day one, and it went on month after month after month. But at the same time, at some point, they did kind of offer him to move up. So it's very hard to understand. But it sounds like this lady just never stopped abusing him. They had all kinds of employees complaining to corporate about her, and they did absolutely nothing about it. They did investigate stuff, but they did nothing about her. So that's where I think is a big problem. Just my opinion. So anyway, that was the one heavy-duty story for tonight. So now we're going to end up, let's see. Okay. Yeah, I know. That's what Apple, it's corporate, typical corporate BS. Okay. I'm going to end up with a happier story and much happier Apple story, by the way. So let's go to a story that will make Apple pleased, or already has made Apple pleased. So this was on Apple Insider. Apple's iPhone is now China's largest smartphone brand. So something they've been after for a long time. Let's go to read review. Okay. It's by William Gallagher. It's from a few days ago. New research says that during October 2021, Apple's sales of the iPhone grew 46%. That's pretty good. Month over month in China, making it the country's largest smartphone manufacturer. Analysts at the research firm say that sales of the iPhone 13 grew 46% month over month, while overall the entire Chinese smartphone market grew only 2% month over month. That's pretty good. That's pretty dominant. Apple could have gained more if it were not for the shortages, especially for the Pro versions, but they did pretty good as it was, said Research Director Tyron Pathak. But still, Apple is managing its supply chain better than other OEMs. Sure sounds like it. TAC notes that the top position in China has been changing hands since the decline of Huawei. I can understand that. The market dynamics changed again. I guess the market dynamics changed again in October, with Apple becoming the new number one OEM for the first, I think the word time should be here, first time since December 2015. So I guess they were 6 years ago. This was driven by the success of the iPhone 13 series, which was also launched cheaper than the iPhone 12 series in China. Smart move. There's the chart showing the difference. Overall, the China market has been slow throughout the year, and Apple's growth is a positive sign, added senior analyst Varun Mishra. It indicates that Chinese smartphone users are maturing fast and are looking to buy more high-end devices, which can be a good opportunity for brands. Yes. The supply chain is also prioritizing higher-end and higher-margin devices amid the shortages. Separately, it has been reported that the shortages mean Apple is struggling to make enough iPads and iPhones to meet demand across Asia. So it sounds like Apple's doing pretty good. That's a pretty impressive month, though. So kudos to them. Let's see that. So that's my last story of the night. But of course, we have to. Ted says Huawei must be down big. Yeah, I would think they would be, because they can't do business with American companies. And Biden has even kept that in place. That's the one company that it seems like Democrats and Republicans from the very beginning, nobody wants nothing to do with Huawei in America, and I can see where they'd be down. So let's go on to glowing rectangles like we do every week. And I wish Ted was in here to explain this. He explains it better than I do, but I will do my best as always. So for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure everybody who does know, but there might be people watching who haven't commented in the comments. So this is on reddit.com/r/glowing rectangle. This was started by some gadget guy, Juan Bagnell, and he's a pretty big YouTuber and an extremely smart guy and an extremely nice guy. And he started this to get people some exposure, either for themselves or for others. So you can go to reddit.com/r/glowing rectangles, and you can put a story that you've written in there. You can put a video that you've made in there, and you'll get more exposure. And in there, let me hit top. People upvote and downvote every day what's the best stories or the best videos. So this video has gotten 7 votes today. 2021 Old Phone Brand Elimination Challenge Day 2. New poll in the comments. And that was posted by Juan 9 hours ago. So that's the top voted story for the day. Second one is always an ad. Okay. And this was posted by Techless. She puts a lot of stuff up with people, which I think is really nice. This is Vivo X70 Plus unboxing. Oh, this is Grant. So Grant, of course, does great work, and we all love him and know it. So I haven't gotten a chance to watch this because I work Thursdays and Fridays. But if Grant made this, it's worth watching. Trust me, folks. Anyway, that's gotten 5 votes. Third story, Straight Talk Changes, Sneed Mobile Tech. He does a lot of these kind of stories, and he's really expert at them. He's gotten 4 votes. So here's one about the Z Flip 3. Tech Todoriki. Don't know who that is, but anyway. Galaxy Z Flip 3. Where am I? I am over here. Galaxy Z Flip 3. Right here. I love this phone. Anyway, so that's what glowing rectangles is all about, folks. So if you want to get some exposure for yourself or somebody else, put a video, a story in there, and they'll get a little more exposure, and maybe they'll get upvoted to the top of the day. So that's glowing rectangles, and you can go there anytime and post whatever story or video you want. So I'm going to stop sharing. And so that's the show for tonight, folks. Renz, thank you as always. Really appreciate it. Ted, glad you came in here. Certainly glad you put some comments in here. Hopefully you'll be on the show again one of these days soon. Anyway, I'm always hopeful. And I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend, and hope it's very blessed. And we were up to 77 degrees this afternoon, and we've had a pretty good week. I rode my motorcycle the other day. It was in the 60s. Rode my bicycle day before yesterday, and it was 70. And tomorrow it's supposed to be in the 60s again, so I'll certainly be on my bicycle again. So enjoying this weather, and I'll take this in December while I can get it. So I hope everybody else has a wonderful weekend and a very blessed weekend. And I will see you on Friday Night Tech Talk next week, and hopefully one or two of the guys will get in here. So you'll have a blessed one, and I will see you next week.